Captain Sarah Chun had endured 8 years of being told she wasn't cut out for elite operations, relegated to desk assignments while watching less qualified soldiers advance to special forces units. Her commanding officers never suspected that. The quiet logistics coordinator had already completed more classified night missions than the entire Delta Force unit combined, operating under a cover so deep that even her own military records had been sanitized to hide her true capabilities. The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Braxton's administrative complex, where Captain Sarah Chun sat hunched over a computer terminal in the Logistics Coordination Center. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Her small desk occupied a corner of the vast warehouse-like building, surrounded by towers of supply manifests and shipping, containers that blocked natural light from reaching her workspace. The constant hum of forklifts and the shouting of warehouse personnel created a cacophony that most people found unbearable. But Sarah had learned to find comfort in the anonymity that chaos provided. Sarah's fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision, updating inventory databases and coordinating supply shipments to forward operating bases across 3 continents. Each entry represented critical resources that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure for units deployed in hostile territories. She wore a standard Army combat uniform that had seen better days, the fabric faded from countless washings and the name tape slightly frayed at the edges. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun that emphasized the sharp angles of her face, though few people ever looked closely enough to notice the intelligence that flickered behind her dark eyes. The logistics center operated on a rigid schedule that Sarah had memorized down to the minute. She arrived each morning at 0630 minutes before her supervisor, Major Robert Kane, made his appearance with a coffee cup permanently attached to his hand in complaints about overnight requisitions that had disrupted his sleep. Sarah used those early hours to complete tasks that would normally take her colleagues twice as long, her efficiency born from years of military training that her personnel file claimed she'd never received. Major Kane's voice cut through the warehouse noise like a rusty blade, carrying the particular tone of irritation that had become Sarah's daily soundtrack. "Chun, these ammunition requests from Kandahar are completely screwed up. The quantities don't match the unit strength reports, and half the weapon systems they're requesting aren't even in theater." He dropped a stack of requisition forms onto Sarah's already cluttered desk without bothering to make eye contact. His attention focused on more important matters that didn't involve explaining obvious errors to subordinates. Sarah glanced up from her computer screen, noting the dismissive posture that Kane had perfected over his 15 years of avoiding actual combat deployments. The Major had built his career on managing paperwork and finding fault with other people's work, skills that served him well in the administrative maze of military bureaucracy, but would have gotten him killed in the environments where Sarah had spent her formative years as a soldier. "Sir, the discrepancies are intentional," Sarah replied quietly, her voice carrying just enough deference to avoid triggering Kane's ego while still providing necessary clarification. "The unit is conducting split operations with embedded special forces elements. The weapon systems they're requesting are for cross-training exercises with allied forces who use different platforms." Kane paused in his retreat toward his office, turning back with the expression of someone who'd just been told that his basic understanding of military operations was fundamentally flawed. "How do you know about split operations and embedded elements? That information isn't included in standard logistics reports." Sarah had learned years ago that revealing too much knowledge invited uncomfortable questions about sources and background, experiences that were better left unexplored. Her cover story was carefully constructed but wouldn't withstand detailed scrutiny from anyone with actual operational experience. Fortunately, Kane's combat experience was limited to PowerPoint presentations and budget meetings. The requisition codes indicate special operations involvement, Sarah explained, pointing to seemingly random numbers on the forms that most logistics personnel ignored. When you process enough of these requests, you start recognizing patterns and how different unit types structure their supply needs. Kane squinted at the requisition forms as if trying to decode a foreign language, which wasn't far from the truth given his limited understanding of how special operations units actually functioned in combat environments. The codes Sarah had referenced were indeed indicative of special ops involvement, but recognizing their significance required knowledge that went far beyond what any logistics coordinator should possess. "Just process the damn requisitions," Kane muttered, already losing interest in explanations that made him feel inadequate. "And make sure the shipping manifests are ready for the morning briefing." General Morrison wants updated timelines for all overseas deliveries. Sarah returned to her computer as Kane disappeared into his office, but her attention was already shifting to the real significance of the Kandahar requisitions. The embedded special forces elements weren't conducting training exercises with allied forces. They were preparing for a classified operation that required specific weapons platforms and ammunition types that suggested a high-value target elimination mission in hostile territory. Sarah's knowledge of such operations came from personal experience rather than logistics databases, though that experience was buried so deeply in classified archives that even she sometimes wondered if it had actually happened. Her official military record showed 8 years of administrative assignments and supply coordination duties, with no indication of the specialized training that had consumed her early 20s or the missions that had earned her decorations she wasn't allowed to wear. The afternoon brought a steady stream of routine tasks that Sarah handled with efficiency that consistently exceeded expectations while remaining unremarkable, enough to avoid unwanted attention. She coordinated ammunition shipments to 3 different time zones, resolved equipment compatibility issues for units she'd never officially heard of, and updated delivery schedules for supplies that didn't officially exist in Army inventories. Her colleagues in the logistics center treated Sarah like a piece of reliable equipment that required no maintenance or acknowledgement. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez handled personnel transfers and barely acknowledged Sarah's existence beyond occasionally asking her to cover phone duties during lunch breaks. Sergeant First Class David Kim managed vehicle maintenance schedules and had never had a conversation with Sarah that extended beyond basic work requirements. Specialist Jennifer Walsh processed medical supply requisitions and seemed genuinely surprised whenever Sarah spoke, as if she'd forgotten that the quiet woman in the corner was capable of speech. Sarah preferred the anonymity, having learned that being overlooked was often the best protection available in environments where curiosity could prove dangerous. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her ability to process complex logistics requirements without asking uncomfortable questions made her valuable to supervisors who preferred subordinates that didn't require detailed explanations or oversight. She'd perfected the art of anticipating needs and solving problems before they became visible to people with higher security clearances and shorter tempers. The phone on Sarah's desk rang with mechanical regularity throughout the day, but her direct line rarely received calls from field units. Most communication flowed through official channels that kept sensitive information away from personnel who weren't cleared for operational details. When Sarah's phone did ring, it usually meant someone had made an error in the communication routing system or needed clarification on technical specifications that weren't clearly explained in standard documentation. "Logistics coordination, this is Captain Chun," Sarah answered, using the neutral tone she'd cultivated for dealing with frustrated personnel who were calling because something had gone wrong with their supply requests. "Captain Chun, this is Colonel Rebecca Torres from the Joint Special Operations Command." I need verification on ammunition specifications for Operation Nightfall. The requisition forms show quantities that seem excessive for the stated mission parameters. Sarah's pulse quickened slightly as she recognized both the caller's name and the operation designation, though her voice remained professionally calm. Colonel Torres was responsible for coordinating logistic support for the military's most sensitive operations, the kind of missions that didn't appear in official records and required supply chains that could withstand detailed scrutiny without revealing operational details. Colonel Torres, I have the Nightfall requisitions in front of me, Sarah replied, pulling up the classified database that most logistics personnel couldn't access. The ammunition quantities are calculated for extended operations with backup contingencies. The mission profile indicates potential for sustained engagement in denied territory where resupply would be impossible. There was a pause on the other end of the line that suggested Colonel Torres was surprised by Sarah's immediate access to operational details that should have required multiple security clearances and approval codes. Most logistics coordinators would have needed to route such requests through several layers of command before accessing the information Sarah had called up instantly. Captain Chun, your clearance level shows logistics coordination only. How are you accessing operational mission profiles for classified special operations? Sarah realized she'd revealed knowledge that her cover identity shouldn't possess. But Colonel Torres's question created an opportunity to test whether her real identity was still adequately protected in the military's bureaucratic maze. Her access to classified databases was legitimate, but explaining how she'd obtained such access would require revealing background information that was supposed to remain buried. Colonel, my logistics coordination duties include support for all JSOC operations originating from this facility. The database access was granted as part of my assignment to ensure proper supply chain management for sensitive missions. I assumed you were aware of the clearance requirements for this position. Sarah's explanation was technically accurate. While avoiding any mention of how she'd actually obtained her security clearances or why her access levels exceeded what her official rank and position should allow, Colonel Torres would need to dig deep into personnel records to discover the discrepancies, and most people didn't have the time or authority to conduct such investigations. The ammunition specifications look correct, Colonel Torres said after another pause. Proceed with the requisition as submitted. But Captain Chun, I want you to personally oversee the packaging and shipping for this order. No delegation to subordinates. The call ended with instructions that confirmed Sarah's suspicion about the operation's sensitivity. Personal oversight requirements meant that someone higher up the command chain was concerned about operational security, possibly because previous logistics leaks had compromised similar missions. Sarah's involvement suggested either someone trusted her discretion or someone was testing her knowledge of protocols that extended beyond normal logistics coordination. Sarah spent the remainder of the afternoon processing routine supply requests, while mentally cataloging the operational indicators she'd observed in recent weeks. The Kandahar Special Forces requisitions, the Nightfall ammunition requirements, and several other seemingly unrelated supply requests formed a pattern that SUGESTED multiple high-priority operations being conducted simultaneously across different theaters of operation. Her analysis was complicated by the fact that she wasn't supposed to possess the operational knowledge necessary to recognize such patterns. Her cover identity as a logistics coordinator provided access to individual pieces of information, but shouldn't allow her to synthesize those pieces into broader operational intelligence. Anyone observing her work habits closely would notice that her decision-making process indicated understanding of military operations that went far beyond supply chain management. As the workday wound down, Sarah began organizing her desk for the next day's responsibilities. Each stack of requisition forms was arranged by priority and operational timeline. Her computer displayed spreadsheets tracking shipment schedules across multiple continents, and her secure database connections were properly terminated, according to protocols that most logistics personnel had never been taught. The level of organization and security consciousness she displayed was consistent with someone who'd received training in operational security measures rather than standard administrative procedures. The logistics center emptied quickly at 1700 hours, her colleagues eager to escape the warehouse environment and pursue whatever activities filled their evening hours. Sarah remained at her desk, completing tasks that could have waited until morning, but seemed more manageable without the constant interruptions and background noise that characterized normal business hours. She'd learned to accomplish her most sensitive work during periods when casual observation was less likely. Major Kane emerged from his office around 1730, pausing at Sarah's desk with the expression of someone who just remembered an important detail. "Chun, I need you to prepare a briefing on special operations logistics requirements for the monthly command review. General Morrison wants detailed analysis of supply chain vulnerabilities and recommendations for improvement." Sarah looked up from her computer screen, recognizing an assignment that would require her to demonstrate knowledge that her official background shouldn't include. Analyzing special operations logistics vulnerabilities meant understanding how such operations actually functioned, knowledge that came from operational experience rather than administrative observation. "Sir, what level of detail should they briefing include? Should I focus on standard supply chain metrics or include analysis of operational security considerations?" Kane's pause suggested he hadn't considered the distinction between those approaches, which wasn't surprising given his limited understanding of how special operations actually worked. "Include whatever analysis you think is relevant. The general wants comprehensive coverage of potential problems and practical solutions." The assignment represented either an opportunity to demonstrate competence that might lead to more challenging responsibilities, or a trap designed to reveal knowledge that Sarah wasn't supposed to possess. Her response would need to balance providing useful analysis with maintaining the boundaries of her cover identity, a calculation that required constant vigilance in an environment where one mistake could unravel years of careful preparation. After Kane left, Sarah accessed databases that contained operational histories for Special Forces missions conducted over the past 5 years. Her analysis would need to identify genuine vulnerabilities without revealing how she'd gained the experience necessary to recognize those vulnerabilities. The challenge was similar to problems she'd faced during her actual operational career, where success required leveraging knowledge and skills while maintaining cover identities that would dissolve under detailed scrutiny. Sarah's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency as she compiled data that painted a comprehensive picture of how logistics failures had compromised special operations across multiple theaters. Each case study represented missions where inadequate supply planning, communication breakdowns, or security breaches had resulted in operational failures that cost lives and strategic opportunities. Her analysis went far beyond what most logistics coordinators could provide, incorporating tactical considerations and operational realities that required firsthand knowledge of how Special Forces units actually functioned in hostile environments. The evening hours passed quickly as Sarah lost herself in work that felt more familiar than anything she'd done during her 8 years of administrative assignments. Analyzing operational requirements and identifying strategic vulnerabilities. Engaged skills that had been dormant but not forgotten, reminders of competencies that her current role barely utilized. She'd been trained to solve complex problems under extreme pressure, but her daily responsibilities involved processing requisition forms and updating spreadsheets that required only a fraction of her actual capabilities. Around 2,100 hours, Sarah finally saved her analysis and began shutting down her computer systems according to security protocols that ensured no sensitive information remained accessible after hours. The logistics center had been empty for hours except for security guards, who barely acknowledged her presence, treating her late hours as evidence of dedication rather than suspicious behavior that warranted closer observation. Sarah gathered her personal items and headed toward the exit, passing through security checkpoints that scanned her identification card and recorded her departure time in logs that would be reviewed by personnel security officers looking for patterns that might indicate suspicious activity. Her consistent routine and unremarkable behavior had established a baseline that made her virtually invisible to security monitoring systems designed to detect anomalies and potential threats. The parking lot outside the logistics center was nearly empty, illuminated by sodium lights that cast everything in an orange glow that flattened colors and created deep shadows between the rows of vehicles. Sarah's 10-year-old sedan sat alone in the section reserved for company-grade officers, a practical vehicle that matched her image as someone who prioritized function over appearance and couldn't afford the luxury cars that decorated the parking areas reserved for senior officials. As Sarah drove through the gates of Fort Braxton, she passed recruitment billboards and unit insignia displays that celebrated the military's elite units and their operational achievements. The images showed soldiers in full combat gear conducting operations that required years of specialized training and exceptional physical conditioning, reminders of a world that felt increasingly distant from her current reality of processing paperwork and managing supply schedules. Sarah's apartment was located 15 minutes from the base in a complex that housed mostly junior military personnel and civil service employees who preferred affordable housing over luxurious amenities. Her unit was small and spartanly furnished, containing only essential items and a few personal photographs that supported her cover identity. The photographs showed family gatherings and college friends, carefully selected images that suggested a normal background without providing enough detail to enable verification of specific claims about her past. The evening routine never varied. Significantly, Sarah prepared a simple dinner while reviewing news reports and intelligence summaries that were available through official channels, looking for information that might provide context for the supply requests and operational indicators she'd observed during the day. Her analysis was informed by experience and training that allowed her to read between the lines of sanitized reports and identify implications that weren't explicitly stated. Sarah's television remained tuned to news channels that focused on international affairs and military developments, background noise that occasionally provided useful information while maintaining the appearance of normal civilian interests. She'd learned to extract relevant intelligence from sources that appeared innocuous to casual observers, skills that had been essential during her operational career, but seemed excessive for someone whose responsibilities were limited to coordinating supply shipments. After dinner, Sarah spent time maintaining physical conditioning through exercise routines that were more intensive than what most logistics personnel considered necessary. Her workout regimen included cardiovascular training, strength exercises, and flexibility work that maintained capabilities she wasn't supposed to possess. Anyone observing her exercise habits closely would notice that her conditioning exceeded what recreational fitness would require, suggesting training objectives that went beyond personal health maintenance. Sarah's apartment contained equipment that seemed excessive for someone with purely administrative responsibilities. Her computer setup included encryption capabilities and communication systems that weren't standard issue for logistics personnel. Her personal library included technical manuals and strategic analysis texts that weren't typically found in the recreational reading of supply coordinators. Her possessions suggested interests and capabilities that didn't align perfectly with her official role, inconsistencies that could raise questions if examined by someone with appropriate background knowledge. Around 2,200 hours, Sarah received a text message on her personal phone from a number she didn't recognize. The message contained what appeared to be a social invitation from someone named Jennifer Walsh. Though Sarah knew that Jennifer Walsh was the specialist who processed medical supply requisitions in her office and had never initiated personal contact outside of work hours. The message read, "Sarah, wanna grab drinks tomorrow after work? Heard about a new place downtown that's supposed to have great live music. Let me know if you're interested." Sarah stared at the message, recognizing communication patterns that suggested surveillance or testing rather than genuine social invitation. The timing, the casual tone, and the source all indicated that someone was probing her personal relationships and after-hours activities. Such probes were routine in environments where personnel security was a constant concern, but they also suggested that her cover identity might be receiving closer scrutiny than usual. Sarah's response needed to maintain her image as someone with normal social interests while avoiding commitments that could lead to situations where her background story might be tested more thoroughly. Her cover identity included elements that would support casual social interaction, but sustained personal relationships required maintaining deceptions that became increasingly difficult over time. She typed a careful response. "Thanks for the invitation, Jennifer. Tomorrow might not work because I'm helping my sister move, but I'd love to check out the place another time. Hope you have fun." The response provided a polite decline while suggesting future availability and including a personal detail that explained her unavailability without seeming evasive. Sarah's fictional sister had been useful in previous situations that required excuses for activities that couldn't be explained through her official responsibilities, providing a plausible reason for commitments that didn't involve work-related activities. After sending the response, Sarah spent several minutes analyzing the implications of receiving unexpected contact from a colleague. The probe could be routine security monitoring, or it could indicate that someone had noticed irregularities in her behavior that warranted closer observation. Either possibility required careful consideration of how to maintain her cover while continuing to perform her actual responsibilities. Sarah prepared for bed using routines that included security measures that weren't necessary for someone living a normal civilian life. She checked door and window locks according to protocols designed to detect surveillance or unauthorized entry, verified that her communication equipment was properly secured, and reviewed her schedule for the next day to identify potential risks or opportunities that might affect her operational security. Her bedroom was arranged to provide maximum situational awareness while maintaining the appearance of normal residential space. The furniture placement allowed clear sight lines to potential entry points. Her personal items were organized for rapid relocation if necessary, and her sleeping position provided immediate access to equipment that wasn't visible to casual observation. The arrangements reflected training and experience that her cover identity wasn't supposed to include. Sarah's sleep was light and easily interrupted, a habit developed during years of operations where threats could materialize without warning and survival often depended on instant alertness. Her apartment's location provided multiple exit routes and good observation of surrounding areas, factors that had influenced her housing choice, though they seemed excessive for someone with purely administrative responsibilities. The night passed without incident, but Sarah remained unconsciously alert to sounds and movements that might indicate surveillance or threat activity. Her training had conditioned her to process environmental information even while sleeping, maintaining awareness of her surroundings that served as an early warning system against potential dangers. Such vigilance was automatic after years of operations where relaxation could prove fatal. Morning arrived with the familiar buzz of her alarm clock and the distant sounds of traffic as Fort Braxton's personnel began another day of military routine. Sarah's morning rituals included physical exercises and equipment, checks that weren't standard for logistics coordinators but had become essential elements of maintaining readiness for responsibilities that her official assignment didn't acknowledge. Sarah reviewed her secure email account before leaving for work, checking for messages that might affect her operational requirements, or provide updates on activities that weren't reflected in official communication channels. Her inbox contained routine administrative correspondence and several messages that appeared to be personal communications, but actually contained encoded information about ongoing operations that required her attention. The drive to Fort Braxton followed the same route Sarah had used for 3 years, past commercial developments and residential areas that housed the military and civilian personnel who supported the base's operations. She used the commute time to observe patterns in traffic and personnel movement that might indicate changes in security posture or operational tempo, information that informed her understanding of activities that weren't discussed in official briefings. Fort Braxton's main gate was staffed by military police who checked identification cards and vehicle credentials with efficiency that reflected years of routine procedures and security protocols. Sarah's passage through the checkpoint was unremarkable, her credentials and appearance matching security database entries that supported her cover identity while concealing the classification levels and operational authorities that her real identity possessed. The logistics center was already bustling with activity when Sarah arrived at 0630, her colleagues preparing for another day of processing supply requests and managing shipment schedules that supported military operations around the world. The morning briefing would cover routine administrative matters and any urgent requirements that had emerged overnight, information that Sarah would need to incorporate into her understanding of operational activities that weren't explicitly discussed in official forums. Major Kane's office light was off, indicating that he hadn't yet arrived for what would undoubtedly be another day of finding fault with other people's work while avoiding any responsibilities that might require actual decision-making under pressure. Sarah used the early morning hours to complete tasks that required access to classified databases and communication systems that weren't monitored as closely during off-peak hours. Sarah settled into her desk chair and began reviewing overnight message traffic and supply requests that had accumulated during the hours when the logistics center was closed. Each requisition represented operational requirements that provided pieces of intelligence about military activities that weren't discussed in official reports, information that Sarah synthesized into broader understanding of strategic developments and tactical priorities. The morning's routine was interrupted by the arrival of a courier who delivered a sealed envelope marked with security classifications that indicated special handling requirements. Sarah signed for the delivery using protocols that verified her identity and clearance levels while creating an audit trail that documented who had access to sensitive information. The envelope contained orders that would change everything Sarah thought she understood about her assignment and the reasons why her cover identity had been maintained for 8 years of administrative duties. Sarah broke the security seal on the envelope with practiced precision, her movements automatic, despite the racing thoughts that accompanied any communication marked with classification levels that exceeded her supposed clearance. The single sheet of paper inside contained orders that appeared routine on the surface, but included coded language that indicated a significant change in her operational status. The document instructed Captain Sarah Chun to report for temporary duty assignment to the Joint Special Operations Training Center at Fort Liberty, effective immediately. Her logistics coordination responsibilities would be assumed by replacement personnel, and her departure from Fort Braxton was authorized for a period not to exceed 60 days. The orders appeared to be standard temporary duty assignment paperwork, but Sarah recognized subtle indicators that suggested something far more complex than routine training or administrative transfer. Sarah read the orders twice, noting details that wouldn't be apparent to casual observation, but carried specific meaning for someone with her background. The reporting date allowed exactly 18 hours for preparation and travel, a timeline that suggested urgency rather than planned personnel rotation. The authorization codes included sequences that indicated special access programs, meaning her temporary assignment involved activities that weren't reflected in normal military documentation. Major Kane arrived at his usual time, coffee cup in hand, an expression already set in the permanent scowl that characterized his approach to morning briefings. He noticed the classified envelope on Sarah's desk immediately, his curiosity overriding his typical indifference to his subordinates' activities. Classified communications weren't routine in the logistics center, and Kane's security clearance was high enough to recognize that something unusual was occurring. "Chun, what's that classified material?" "Nothing on my briefing schedule mentions special communications for logistics coordination personnel." Kane moved closer to Sarah's desk, his posture suggesting authority that he rarely needed to exercise in an environment where his subordinates handled routine administrative tasks that didn't involve sensitive information. Sarah folded the orders and placed them in her secure document folder, following protocols that prevented unauthorized access while avoiding behavior that might seem evasive or suspicious. "Sir, it's temporary duty orders for special training at Fort Liberty. Apparently, someone requested logistics coordination expertise for an upcoming exercise." Kane's expression shifted from curiosity to irritation as he processed the implication that one of his personnel had been requested for assignments that he hadn't been consulted about. His authority within the logistics center was rarely challenged, and external requests for his subordinates suggested that higher command levels were making decisions without his input or approval. "Nobody cleared this with me. I don't have replacement personnel available, and we've got major supply operations scheduled for the next month. You can't just disappear for 2 months without affecting our operational capacity." Kane's voice carried the edge of frustration that appeared whenever he encountered situations that he couldn't control through normal administrative channels. Sarah recognized Kane's position, but also understood that the orders she'd received weren't subject to local commander approval or modification. The classification levels and authorization codes indicated that her temporary assignment had been approved by authorities who outranked Kane by several levels and weren't concerned with logistics center staffing issues. "Sir, the orders indicate that replacement personnel will be provided. I assume the authorization came from higher command levels that coordinated with your chain of command before issuing the assignment." Sarah's response was carefully neutral, acknowledging Kane's concerns while making it clear that the orders weren't optional or subject to local modification. Kane studied the folder containing Sarah's orders as if he could determine their contents through visual inspection, his expression reflecting the frustration of someone who was discovering that his authority had definite limitations. His position as logistics center commander gave him control over routine operations, but didn't extend to personnel assignments that originated from special access programs or classified activities. "Fine, but I want a full briefing on these training requirements when you return. If they're pulling my best logistics coordinator for special assignments, I need to understand what capabilities they're looking for so I can train other personnel to the same standards." Kane's response revealed more about his assessment of Sarah's performance than he typically acknowledged in their daily interactions. Sarah spent the morning completing transition procedures that would allow her replacement to assume her responsibilities without disrupting ongoing supply operations. Her task organization was more detailed than most personnel maintained, reflecting systematic approaches to complex problems that went beyond what standard logistics training provided. The documentation she prepared included analysis and recommendations that demonstrated understanding of operational requirements that exceeded her supposed expertise. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Sarah's desk around 1,000 hours, carrying transfer paperwork that needed completion before Sarah's departure. Rodriguez had worked in the logistics center longer than anyone else, and had observed personnel transfers that involved various levels of classification and operational significance. Her experience allowed her to recognize when assignments were more complex than they appeared. Captain Chun, these transfer orders are unusual. The authorization codes indicate special access programs, and the reporting location is listed as a training facility that doesn't appear in normal military directories. What kind of training are you doing at Fort Liberty? Rodriguez's question reflected curiosity that was reasonable given her administrative responsibilities, but potentially problematic if Sarah's assignment involved activities that required operational security. Sarah continued packing her personal items while considering how much information she could safely provide to colleagues who would be processing her departure paperwork. Rodriguez's security clearance was sufficient for routine logistics operations, but probably didn't extend to special access programs or classified training activities that might be associated with her temporary assignment. The orders mention logistics coordination training for special operations support. I assume it's related to improving supply chain management for units that have unique requirements. Sarah's explanation was technically accurate while avoiding details that might reveal the true nature of her assignment or suggest capabilities that her cover identity shouldn't possess. Rodriguez nodded slowly, but her expression indicated skepticism about Sarah's explanation. Special operations logistics training wasn't typically conducted at facilities that required special access authorization and personnel selected for. Such training usually had operational backgrounds that weren't reflected in Sarah's official military record. Captain, I've been processing personnel transfers for 12 years, and I've never seen authorization codes like these for routine training assignments. Are you sure this is just logistics coordination training? Rodriguez's question was direct, enough to require a response, but friendly enough to suggest genuine concern rather than official interrogation. Sarah recognized that Rodriguez's experience with military bureaucracy made her sensitive to discrepancies that might not be apparent to less experienced personnel. Her observation about unusual authorization codes was accurate and suggested that Sarah's assignment was receiving closer scrutiny than she'd anticipated. The situation required careful management to avoid raising additional questions that could compromise her operational security. Sergeant Rodriguez, I can only tell you what's in the orders. Special operations units have unique supply requirements that aren't covered in standard logistics training, so it makes sense that they'd provide specialized instruction for personnel who support their operations. Sarah's response acknowledged Rodriguez's concerns, while redirecting attention toward the legitimate training aspects of her assignment. The afternoon brought a series of administrative tasks that needed completion before Sarah's departure. The following morning, her security clearances required update notifications, her personnel records needed temporary duty annotations, and her access to classified databases had to be modified to reflect her change in assignment status. Each procedure created documentation that would be reviewed by security personnel who monitored for irregularities that might indicate compromised operations or personnel. David Kim approached Sarah's workstation around 1400 hours, carrying vehicle maintenance schedules that required coordination with her replacement. Kim had worked with Sarah on numerous supply operations and had developed respect for her technical competence and attention to detail that exceeded what he'd observed in other logistics coordinators. His interaction with Sarah provided another opportunity for careful observation of her preparation activities. Captain Chun, these maintenance schedules show equipment requirements that I haven't seen before. The vehicle configurations and communication systems seem more advanced than what we normally support. Are these related to your special training assignment? Kim's question reflected the analytical thinking that made him effective at equipment maintenance, but also made him observant of details that others might overlook. Sarah reviewed the maintenance schedules Kim had provided, recognizing equipment specifications that were indeed associated with special operations vehicles rather than standard military transportation. The fact that such equipment was being prepared in connection with her assignment suggested that her training would involve practical exercises rather than classroom instruction alone. Sergeant Kim, I don't have detailed information about the training curriculum, but special operations units use specialized equipment that requires different maintenance protocols. It makes sense that training would include familiarization with systems that aren't covered in standard military education. Sarah's response provided a reasonable explanation while avoiding confirmation of specific operational details that might be sensitive. Kim studied the equipment specifications with the intensity of someone who understood that vehicle configurations often reflected mission requirements and operational environments. His experience with military transportation systems gave him insight into the relationship between equipment capabilities and the activities they were designed to support. These vehicles are configured for operations in hostile territory, with armor protection and communication systems that aren't needed for training exercises. Whatever you're doing at Fort Liberty involves more than classroom instruction. Kim's observation was accurate, but created another situation where Sarah needed to manage curiosity without appearing evasive or providing information that could compromise operational security. Sarah finished packing her personal items and began securing her workstation according to protocols that ensured sensitive information wouldn't be accessible during her absence. Her computer systems required special shutdown procedures, her classified documents needed secure storage, and her communication equipment had to be properly secured to prevent unauthorized access. The level of security consciousness she displayed was consistent with someone who regularly handled sensitive information but exceeded what most logistics coordinators considered necessary. Jennifer Walsh appeared at Sarah's cubicle around 15:30 hours, carrying medical supply requisitions that required processing before the end of the business day. Walsh had been the source of the mysterious text message the previous evening, and her appearance at Sarah's workstation provided an opportunity to assess whether her communication had been part of routine social interaction or something more complex. Captain Chun, I heard you're transferring to Fort Liberty for special training. That sounds exciting. I've always wondered what it would be like to work with special operations units. Walsh's comment seemed casual, but Sarah detected underlying interest that suggested more than polite conversation about career opportunities. Sarah continued organizing her departure materials while responding to Walsh's apparent curiosity about her assignment. The interaction needed to maintain normal social dynamics while avoiding discussion of details that might be sensitive or inconsistent with her cover identity. It should be interesting, Jennifer. I appreciate the text message you sent yesterday. But with all this preparation for temporary duty, I haven't had time to think about social activities. Maybe when I get back we can check out that place you mentioned. Sarah's response acknowledged Walsh's previous communication, while providing a reasonable explanation for her unavailability that didn't seem dismissive of future social interaction. Walsh's expression suggested disappointment, but Sarah couldn't determine whether the reaction reflected genuine social interest or something more calculated. Personnel security protocols included routine monitoring of social relationships and after-hours activities, and Walsh's approach could represent either normal friendship development or surveillance, designed to assess Sarah's personal connections and potential vulnerabilities. Of course I understand. The training opportunity sounds like it could be great for your career development. How long will you be at Fort Liberty? Walsh's question was reasonable in the context of normal conversation, but also provided information that could be useful for monitoring Sarah's activities and availability for future contact. Sarah provided the standard 60-day timeframe mentioned in her orders while recognizing that her actual assignment duration might be different depending on operational requirements that weren't reflected in official documentation. Temporary duty assignments often extended beyond initial estimates when circumstances required additional training or when personnel were needed for activities that hadn't been anticipated during planning phases. The remainder of the afternoon passed quickly as Sarah completed final administrative requirements and prepared for departure the following morning. Her replacement had been identified as Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, a logistics specialist with experience in supply operations, but without the specialized knowledge that Sarah had brought to complex support requirements. The transition would require careful documentation to ensure continuity of operations without revealing capabilities that exceeded normal logistics coordination. Major Kane conducted a final review of Sarah's transition materials around 1630 hours, examining the documentation she'd prepared to support continued operations during her absence. His review revealed the depth and sophistication of Sarah's analytical work, organizational systems that went far beyond what he'd expected from routine logistics coordination, and recommendations that demonstrated understanding of strategic considerations that weren't typically addressed at their operational level. Shun, this transition documentation is impressive. Your analysis of supply chain vulnerabilities and recommendations for operational improvements are more detailed than most field-grade officers provide. Where did you develop this level of strategic thinking? Kane's question reflected genuine curiosity about capabilities that exceeded his assessment of Sarah's background and training. Sarah recognized that her preparation materials revealed analytical skills that weren't consistent with her supposed experience level, but thorough documentation was necessary to ensure continued operations and prevent supply failures that could affect operational units. Her response needed to acknowledge Kane's observation while maintaining her cover identity's limitations. Sir, you develop perspective after processing thousands of supply requests and observing patterns in how different units structure their logistics requirements. I've had opportunities to see what works and what doesn't across various operational environments. Sarah's explanation provided a reasonable source for her insights, while avoiding claims about training or experience that couldn't be verified through official records. Kane nodded slowly, but his expression suggested that he was beginning to recognize discrepancies between Sarah's supposed background and the competencies she demonstrated during her assignment to the logistics center. His observation was concerning because it indicated that her cover identity might not withstand detailed scrutiny from someone with appropriate analytical skills and motivation to investigate inconsistencies. Sarah completed her final security procedures and prepared to leave Fort Braxton for what might be the last time, depending on how her assignment at Fort Liberty developed and whether her cover identity remained viable for continued administrative duties. Her departure created opportunities for advancement, but also risks that could compromise operations that extended far beyond her individual assignment. The drive home provided time to consider the implications of her temporary duty orders and the potential changes they represented in her operational status. Her assignment to Fort Liberty could indicate routine training opportunities, or it could signal that her administrative cover was being terminated in favor of responsibilities that better utilized her actual capabilities. Either possibility required careful preparation for activities that might be significantly different from her recent duties. Sarah's apartment would remain available during her temporary assignment, providing a base of operations for personal activities and a location for communication that didn't involve official military channels. Her departure preparations included securing personal items and establishing protocols for maintaining contact with information sources that weren't connected to her official assignment but remained important for her broader operational awareness. The evening hours passed quickly as Sarah completed packing and preparation activities that reflected both her official assignment requirements and operational security considerations that weren't explicitly covered in her orders. Her personal equipment included items that weren't standard for training assignments but might be necessary depending on the actual nature of her activities at Fort Liberty. Sarah's departure from Fort Braxton the following morning was unremarkable, her vehicle joining the flow of military and civilian personnel who commuted to various assignments throughout the region. Her transition from administrative duties to specialized training represented either a natural career progression or a Significant change in operational requirements that would determine her future role in activities that remained officially classified. The drive to Fort Liberty provided opportunities for observation and analysis that informed Sarah's understanding of regional security posture and operational tempo. Her route passed multiple military installations and defense contractors whose activities provided indicators of broader strategic developments that weren't discussed in official briefings but could be inferred from personnel movements and facility preparations. Fort Liberty's main gate was staffed by security personnel, whose procedures reflected the heightened awareness that characterized installations involved in special operations, training, and classified activities. Sarah's credentials were verified against databases that included classification levels and special access authorizations that weren't routinely checked for standard military assignments. The thoroughness of the security screening confirmed that her temporary duty involved activities that required exceptional operational security. The Joint Special Operations Training Center occupied a portion of Fort Liberty that was separated from normal base activities by additional security barriers and access controls that limited personnel movement between training areas and administrative facilities. Sarah's reporting location was identified through procedures that verified her identity and assignment authorization, while maintaining separation between personnel involved in different programs and classification levels. Sarah's arrival at the training center was coordinated by personnel whose bearing and demeanor reflected operational experience rather than routine administrative duties. Her initial briefing would provide information about her assignment requirements and the activities that would occupy her time during the 60-day period covered by her orders, though she suspected that the actual scope of her training would exceed what had been described in official documentation. The training facility represented a significant change from the logistics center environment where Sarah had spent 8 years maintaining careful anonymity while processing routine supply requests. Her new assignment would require different skills and provide opportunities for activities that better matched her actual capabilities, though the transition also created risks that could compromise operational security measures that had protected her identity and enabled her administrative infiltration. Sarah's temporary duty assignment at Fort Liberty marked the beginning of a phase in her career that would either validate her years of careful preparation or expose vulnerabilities that could end her operational effectiveness. The specialized training she was scheduled to receive would test capabilities that she'd maintained through personal effort, but hadn't been able to demonstrate through official military channels, opportunities that carried both promise and significant risk for her continued operational security. Colonel Marcus Webb stood behind the one-way glass observation window, watching Sarah complete what was supposed to be an impossible night infiltration exercise. The training scenario had been designed to challenge seasoned special operations veterans, yet the woman with 8 years of administrative records was moving through the simulated enemy compound with precision that exceeded anything he'd witnessed in 23 years of Special Forces command. Sarah's silhouette moved like liquid shadow across the moonlit terrain, her approach to the target building demonstrating tactical awareness that couldn't be learned from manuals or classroom instruction. She identified sentry positions that other candidates had missed, exploited blind spots in surveillance coverage that required intimate knowledge of security protocols, and neutralized simulated threats with efficiency that spoke to muscle memory developed through actual combat experience. The exercise controller, Master Sergeant Dennis Blake, monitored Sarah's progress through thermal imaging and motion sensors that tracked every movement within the training area. His tactical display showed a systematic infiltration that followed textbook special operations procedures, but executed with refinements that suggested training far beyond what Sarah's personnel file indicated she'd received. Sir, she's identified all 12 sentry positions without triggering any detection systems, Most candidates miss at least half the surveillance points and trigger multiple alarms during their first attempt. Blake's voice carried the amazement of someone who'd observed hundreds of special operations candidates struggle with scenarios that Sarah was navigating effortlessly. Colonel Webb studied the tactical display that showed Sarah's route through the compound, noting decision points that revealed understanding of advanced infiltration techniques and threat assessment protocols. Her movement pattern indicated familiarity with enemy tactics that came from operational experience rather than theoretical study, knowledge that raised uncomfortable questions about her background and the accuracy of her official military records. "Sergeant Blake, how long has she been in the training program?" Webb asked, though he already knew that Sarah had arrived at Fort Liberty only 6 days earlier and had been conducting orientation activities until this evening's practical exercise. Blake consulted his training records, confirming what Webb had suspected about the impossibility of Sarah's demonstrated competence given her supposed experience level. "Sir, this is her first field exercise. She completed classroom orientation on surveillance techniques and basic infiltration procedures, but tonight is her initial practical application." Webb watched Sarah approach the primary target building, using techniques that demonstrated mastery of skills that required years to develop and could only be perfected through repeated application in hostile environments. Her confident movement and tactical decision-making suggested operational experience that wasn't reflected anywhere in her official military documentation, discrepancies that demanded immediate investigation. Sarah's performance during the infiltration exercise had exceeded expectations to a degree that created more problems than it solved. Her capabilities were precisely what special operations units needed, but her background story couldn't explain how she'd acquired such advanced skills without training that would be documented in military education records and personnel files that were subject to routine verification procedures. The training scenario escalated when exercise controllers introduced complications that weren't part of the standard curriculum, adding unexpected threats and changing environmental conditions that would challenge even experienced operators. Sarah adapted to each modification with tactical flexibility that demonstrated not just training but operational experience that enabled rapid assessment and response to evolving situations. "Sir, we've added 3 roving patrols and modified the surveillance coverage, but she's adjusting her approach in real time. Her threat assessment and route selection indicate understanding of counter-surveillance techniques that aren't covered in our basic training program." Blake's observation confirmed what Webb was seeing through the monitoring systems, performance that exceeded what should be possible given Sarah's supposed background. Sarah reached the target building without triggering any security systems or alerting simulated sentries to her presence, an accomplishment that less than 5% of candidates achieved during their initial attempts. Her infiltration had been flawless, demonstrating technical competence and tactical judgment that belonged in advanced special operations units rather than introductory training programs. The interior portion of the exercise required Sarah to navigate through the building while avoiding detection systems and neutralizing threats that protected sensitive information she was tasked with recovering. Her movement through the structure demonstrated familiarity with building clearing procedures and threat assessment techniques that were taught only in advanced special operations schools that weren't listed in her training history. Webb activated his communication system to contact the exercise area directly, his concern about Sarah's demonstrated capabilities overriding normal protocols that prohibited command interference during practical exercises. "This is Colonel Webb. I need to speak with Captain Chun immediately after exercise completion. Maintain surveillance and document all procedural details." Sarah completed the information recovery portion of the exercise with efficiency that suggested she'd performed similar missions under actual operational conditions. Her handling of simulated intelligence materials and extraction procedures demonstrated understanding of sensitive document protocols that weren't covered in routine military training, and required security clearances that exceeded her official authorization levels. The extraction phase of the exercise provided the final confirmation of Sarah's exceptional capabilities as she moved through the compound toward the designated recovery point while avoiding security forces that had been alerted to potential intrusion. Her route selection and timing demonstrated tactical sophistication that enabled her to complete the entire scenario without detection or compromise of mission objectives. Master Sergeant Blake monitored Sarah's extraction with growing amazement at performance that challenged his understanding of what was possible for someone with her supposed experience level. Colonel Webb, she's completed the entire exercise without triggering any alarms or detection systems. This is the first time anyone has achieved perfect scores across all evaluation criteria. Webb studied the comprehensive data that documented Sarah's exercise performance, recognizing technical competence that matched or exceeded standards expected from operators with years of special operations experience. Her demonstrated capabilities created opportunities for advanced assignments but also raised questions about her background that could compromise operational security if not properly addressed. Sarah reached the extraction point exactly on schedule. Her arrival coordinated with precision that demonstrated understanding of timing requirements and operational coordination that came from experience with actual missions rather than training scenarios. Her performance had been exceptional by any standard, but particularly remarkable given her supposed lack of relevant background or specialized training. The post-exercise debriefing was conducted in a secure conference room where Sarah's performance could be analyzed without outside observation or interference. Colonel Webb entered the room carrying classified files that contained information about Sarah's assignment and the discrepancies that her demonstration had revealed between her official records and actual capabilities. Captain Chun, your performance during tonight's exercise was exceptional. In fact, it was so exceptional that it raises questions about your background and training that aren't answered by your personnel file. Webb's direct approach reflected the seriousness of discrepancies that could indicate compromised records or personnel security issues that required immediate resolution. Sarah maintained the composed demeanor that had characterized her approach to challenging situations throughout her administrative assignment, recognizing that her demonstration of capabilities had created exactly the kind of scrutiny she'd spent years avoiding. Her response would need to address Webb's concerns while protecting operational security that extended beyond her individual assignment. Sir, I've always been interested in military tactics and have studied special operations procedures through available training materials and professional development programs. Sarah's explanation provided a plausible source for theoretical knowledge, while avoiding claims about practical experience that couldn't be verified through official channels. Webb opened the classified folder containing Sarah's complete military records, including documentation that wasn't normally accessible to personnel without special authorization. His review revealed gaps and inconsistencies that suggested Sarah's background involved activities that weren't reflected in standard personnel files, discrepancies that required explanation before her training could continue. Captain Chun, your demonstrated capabilities exceed what could be learned through study or routine military training. Your tactical decision-making and technical competence indicate operational experience that isn't documented anywhere in your official records. I need you to explain how you acquired skills that typically require years of specialized training and actual combat deployment. Sarah recognized that her performance had exceeded the boundaries of her cover identity's credibility, forcing a decision about how much information she could reveal without compromising broader operational security. Webb's security clearance was sufficient for sensitive information, but her actual background involved classification levels that might exceed his authorization. Colonel Webb, my assignment to this training program wasn't random. There are aspects of my background that require special handling due to classification issues that aren't reflected in standard personnel documentation. Sarah's response acknowledged the discrepancies Webb had identified while suggesting that explanations existed, but required special authorization to discuss. Webb studied Sarah's demeanor and response patterns, recognizing signs of someone who was accustomed to dealing with sensitive information and operational security requirements that extended beyond normal military protocols. Her careful phrasing suggested that she possessed knowledge about her own background that she wasn't authorized to reveal without proper clearance verification. Captain Chun, are you telling me that your personnel records have been sanitized to conceal operational experience that would explain your demonstrated capabilities? Webb's question was direct enough to require a response, but structured to allow Sarah flexibility in how much information she chose to reveal. Sarah's pause reflected careful consideration of how to respond to direct questions about classification issues that she couldn't discuss without compromising operational security. Her answer would need to satisfy Webb's legitimate concerns while maintaining protection for information that wasn't appropriate for discussion in current circumstances. Sir, I'm telling you that my assignment to this training program involves considerations that go beyond normal personnel development. If you need additional information about my background, I recommend contacting Colonel Patricia Morrison at Pentagon Special Access Programs for appropriate authorization and briefing materials. Webb recognized the reference to special access programs as confirmation that Sarah's background involved classification levels that exceeded normal military activities and required special handling procedures. Her recommendation provided a specific contact for verification, while acknowledging that explanations required authorization that he might not possess. The mention of Colonel Morrison's name triggered recognition for Webb, who was familiar with Pentagon personnel responsible for coordinating classified programs that involved special operations units. Morrison's involvement suggested that Sarah's assignment wasn't routine training, but rather a specialized program that required extraordinary operational security and personnel management. Captain Chun, while we're arranging proper authorization for background briefings, I need to understand your actual capabilities so we can structure your training appropriately. Your performance tonight indicates that you don't need basic infiltration instruction, so what kind of advanced training would be most beneficial for your development? Sarah recognized an opportunity to influence her training curriculum in ways that would better utilize her actual capabilities while maintaining operational security about her background. Her response could guide the program toward activities that would enhance her skills without requiring explanations about how she'd acquired her current competence level. Colonel Webb, I would benefit from advanced urban operations training, particularly scenarios involving multiple threat environments and complex extraction requirements. I'm also interested in leadership development for special operations coordination and planning responsibilities. Sarah's request indicated ambition for responsibilities that matched her DEMONS TRATED capabilities while suggesting career progression that would justify advanced training. Webb nodded slowly, recognizing that Sarah's training preferences aligned with what he'd observed about her capabilities and suggested career aspirations that made sense given her exceptional performance. Her request for leadership development indicated readiness for responsibilities that exceeded her current rank but matched her demonstrated competence. Captain Chun, I'm going to recommend you for accelerated progression through advanced training modules, but first we need to resolve the background verification issues. Until then, you'll continue with practical exercises that will allow us to assess your full range of capabilities. Webb's decision reflected recognition of Sarah's potential, while acknowledging the need for proper authorization before proceeding with sensitive training activities. The following morning brought new challenges as Sarah was assigned to a team-based exercise that would test her ability to work with other special operations candidates while maintaining operational security. About her background. The scenario involved coordinated infiltration of a heavily defended compound that required precise timing and communication between team members who possessed varying levels of experience and training. Sarah's team consisted of 3 other candidates, whose backgrounds represented typical special operations recruitment, including a former Army Ranger, a Navy SEAL veteran, and a Marine Force reconnaissance specialist. Each possessed documented combat experience and specialized training that qualified them for advanced special operations assignments, but none had demonstrated the exceptional capabilities that characterized Sarah's individual performance. The team leader, Captain James Rodriguez, was a decorated veteran with multiple combat deployments and extensive experience in special operations planning and execution. His assignment to lead Sarah's team reflected both his qualifications and the need for experienced leadership to coordinate personnel with varying capabilities and backgrounds. All right, people. Tonight's exercise involves infiltrating a compound that's defended by 20 sentries, using rotating patrol patterns and overlapping surveillance coverage. Our objective is to neutralize all threats without triggering alarms, and extract intelligence materials from the primary target building. Rodriguez's briefing outlined a scenario that was significantly more complex than individual exercises and required coordination that tested team communication and tactical planning skills. Sarah listened to the briefing while assessing her teammates' capabilities and considering how to contribute to mission planning without revealing knowledge that exceeded her supposed experience level. Her input would need to be valuable enough to ensure mission success, but presented in ways that didn't raise questions about how she'd acquired such detailed understanding of advanced tactical procedures. Lieutenant Michael Torres, the former Army Ranger, studied the compound layout with obvious concern about the challenge level represented by 20 sentries and multiple surveillance systems. Captain Rodriguez, this seems like a significant escalation from individual exercises. Are we expected to neutralize all threats simultaneously, or can we use sequential elimination techniques? Sarah recognized that Torres's question reflected limited understanding of advanced infiltration procedures that were designed to avoid detection rather than eliminate threats through direct confrontation. Her team's success would depend on education and coordination that utilized everyone's capabilities while compensating for knowledge gaps that could compromise mission objectives. The optimal approach would be coordinated movement that exploits sentry patrol patterns to create windows of opportunity for advancement without requiring threat elimination. Sarah offered her suggestion, demonstrating understanding of stealth infiltration techniques that minimized risk while achieving mission objectives. Petty Officer First Class David Kim, the Navy SEAL veteran, looked at Sarah with surprise that reflected his assessment of her supposed inexperience with advanced tactical procedures. Captain Chun, those techniques require precise timing and coordination that's typically developed through extensive training and operational experience. Are you familiar with advanced self-infiltration procedures? Sarah's response required careful balance between demonstrating competence that would contribute to mission success and avoiding revelations about experience that couldn't be explained through her official background. Her team's effectiveness depended on utilizing her capabilities while maintaining operational security about their source. I've studied advanced infiltration techniques through professional development programs and tactical analysis of successful special operations missions. The principles seem applicable to our current scenario if we can coordinate timing and communication effectively. Sarah's explanation provided theoretical justification for her knowledge, while avoiding claims about practical experience that would invite uncomfortable questions. Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, the Marine Force reconnaissance specialist, nodded approvingly at Sarah's analytical approach to the tactical challenge. Captain Chun's suggestion makes sense from a risk management perspective. Sequential threat elimination would increase our exposure time and chances of detection, while coordinated movement could minimize our signature and maximize our chances of successful completion. The team spent several hours developing a coordinated infiltration plan that incorporated each member's capabilities while addressing the complex challenges presented by the exercise scenario. Sarah's contributions to tactical planning demonstrated understanding of advanced procedures that impressed her teammates, while raising subtle questions about her background that she managed through careful explanation and theoretical justification. Rodriguez finalized the mission plan with assignments that utilized each team members' documented specialties while incorporating Sarah's tactical insights into movement coordination and threat assessment. Shun, your analytical approach to this problem has been impressive. Your tactical planning skills seem more advanced than what I'd expect from someone with administrative background. Sarah recognized that her contributions to mission planning had exceeded the boundaries of her cover identity's credibility, but the team's success required utilizing her actual capabilities, regardless of how they'd been acquired. Her response needed to address Rodriguez's observation while maintaining plausible explanations for her competence. Captain Rodriguez, administrative work has given me opportunities to study operational reports and analyze successful mission procedures from multiple special operations units. Pattern recognition and analytical thinking are transferable skills that apply to tactical planning regardless of background. Sarah's explanation provided reasonable justification for her insights while redirecting attention toward cognitive abilities rather than operational experience. The evening infiltration exercise began with team insertion at a location that required coordinated movement across several kilometers of challenging terrain before reaching the target compound. Sarah's performance during the approach phase demonstrated physical conditioning and navigation skills that exceeded what her teammates expected from someone with purely administrative background. Torres observed Sarah's movement techniques with growing respect for capabilities that contradicted his initial assessment of her qualifications for special operations training. Chun, your fieldcraft and physical conditioning are exceptional. How did you develop these skills through administrative assignments? Sarah maintained her pace while providing explanation that addressed Teresa's curiosity without revealing training that wasn't documented in her official records. I've always maintained high physical fitness standards and studied field techniques through available training materials. Physical conditioning and basic movement skills are essential for any military personnel regardless of their primary specialty. The team reached the target compound perimeter exactly on schedule, their coordinated approach demonstrating effectiveness that exceeded what exercise controllers had expected from candidates with varying experience levels. Sarah's tactical insights had contributed to planning that utilized everyone's capabilities while compensating for knowledge gaps that could have compromised mission success. Rodriguez positioned his team for the infiltration phase, implementing the coordinated movement plan that incorporated Sarah's suggestions about timing and threat assessment. Remember, we're attempting complete stealth penetration without threat elimination. Success depends on precise timing and communication discipline. Sarah moved through the compound with her teammates, her performance demonstrating tactical competence that complemented rather than overshadowed her colleagues' documented capabilities. Her contributions to team success were significant but presented in ways that enhanced collective effectiveness rather than highlighting individual superiority that would invite uncomfortable questions about her background. The team's progress through the compound exceeded all expectations as they successfully neutralized 20 sentries without triggering any detection systems or alarms. Sarah's tactical planning had enabled coordinated elimination that demonstrated precision and efficiency that impressed exercise controllers while raising questions about the source of such advanced capabilities. Colonel Webb monitored the team exercise from the command center, observing performance that confirmed his suspicions about Sarah's exceptional qualifications while documenting team dynamics that revealed her natural leadership abilities and tactical expertise. Her integration with experienced operators suggested readiness for advanced responsibilities that exceeded her current rank and official experience level. Sergeant Blake, this team performance is unprecedented. They've achieved complete mission success using techniques that exceed our advanced training curriculum. Captain Chun's contributions to tactical planning and execution indicate capabilities that warrant immediate evaluation for accelerated progression. Webb's assessment reflected recognition of exceptional performance that demanded adjustments to normal training procedures and timeline. The extraction phase of the exercise demonstrated continued excellence as Sarah's team successfully retrieved target intelligence and departed the compound without detection or compromise of mission objectives. Their coordinated performance had exceeded all benchmarks while revealing individual capabilities that suggested readiness for operational assignments that weren't typically available to personnel completing initial training programs. Post-exercise, debriefing revealed the exceptional nature of the team's success and Sarah's significant contributions to tactical planning and execution. Her performance had been consistently excellent while remaining collaborative rather than dominating, demonstrating leadership potential and technical competence that indicated readiness for advanced responsibilities and specialized assignments. The emergency alarm pierced the pre-dawn darkness at Fort Liberty as Colonel Webb burst into the command center, his face grim with the weight of catastrophic news. Intelligence reports indicated that a classified research facility 30 miles away had been overrun by hostile forces, with 26 American personnel trapped inside while enemy operatives prepared to extract sensitive information that could compromise national security operations worldwide. Sarah was jolted awake in her quarters by the urgent summons over the base communication system, her training automatically engaging as she processed the crisis indicators that suggested a real-world emergency rather than another training exercise. The tone and urgency of the announcement triggered responses that came from operational experience rather than academic preparation, muscle memory that revealed itself before conscious thought could intervene. Colonel Webb assembled the available personnel in the briefing room, his expression reflecting the desperate circumstances that had forced him to consider options that violated normal operational protocols. The satellite imagery displayed on the main screen showed a heavily fortified facility surrounded by enemy forces whose capabilities and equipment indicated professional military training rather than terrorist improvisation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a training exercise. The Blackwood Research Facility has been compromised by an unknown hostile force that has taken 26 American personnel hostage while attempting to extract classified information that cannot be allowed to fall into enemy hands. Webb's briefing carried the gravity of someone who understood that failure would result in strategic consequences extending far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Sarah studied the intelligence displays with analytical focus that processed tactical information faster than her teammates could absorb the basic parameters of the crisis situation. Her assessment of enemy positions, defensive configurations, and potential infiltration routes demonstrated understanding that came from extensive operational experience rather than theoretical study, knowledge that she could no longer conceal. Given the severity of the situation, Captain Rodriguez recognized the impossibility of the mission parameters as outlined by available intelligence, his expression reflecting the tactical reality that conventional assault operations would result in massive casualties while likely failing to prevent the extraction of sensitive information. Colonel Webb, this facility is defended by professional operators using advanced equipment and coordinated tactics. A direct assault would be suicide for our personnel and the hostages. Webb's response revealed the desperation that had led to consideration of options that exceeded normal special operations protocols and available resources. Captain Rodriguez, direct assault isn't an option. We need surgical infiltration that neutralizes the threat without triggering execution of hostages or destruction of classified materials. This mission requires capabilities that exceed conventional special operations parameters. Sarah stepped forward with decision that abandoned 8 years of careful concealment in favor of mission requirements that demanded utilization of her actual capabilities. Colonel Webb, I can infiltrate that facility and neutralize the hostile force without compromising hostage safety or classified information. But I need complete operational authority and acknowledgement that my background includes training and experience that isn't reflected in standard personnel records. The room fell silent as Sarah's declaration revealed confidence and capability that contradicted everything her teammates thought they understood about her background and qualifications. Her demeanor had transformed from collaborative team member to operational commander, bearing that reflected authority developed through years of leading complex missions under extreme circumstances. Webb studied Sarah's expression with recognition that finally explained the discrepancies between her documented background and demonstrated capabilities. Captain Chun, are you telling me that you possess operational experience sufficient to conduct solo infiltration against professional military opposition? Sarah's response carried the weight of classified experience that could no longer remain hidden given the tactical requirements of the current crisis. Colonel Webb, my name is Major Sarah Chun, United States Army Special Operations Command, Deep Cover Operations Division. I've been operating under administrative cover for 8 years while conducting classified missions that required extended infiltration of military bureaucracy and personnel systems. The revelation stunned her teammates into silence as they processed the implications of having worked alongside an operator whose actual rank and experience exceeded their own while maintaining perfect operational security for years. Rodriguez stared at Sarah with mixture of amazement and respect that reflected his growing understanding of the sophistication required for such extended deception. Webb activated secure communication systems to verify Sarah's claimed identity and operational authority, his commands revealing familiarity with classification levels and access protocols that confirmed his awareness of deep cover operations and their personnel management requirements. Authentication request for Major Sarah Chun, Deep Cover Operations Division. Authorization code Omega 77 Alpha. The response came within minutes, confirming Sarah's identity and operational authority while providing background information. That explained her assignment and the capabilities she'd developed during classified missions that weren't documented in standard military records. Her 8 years of administrative cover had been preparation for operations that required intimate knowledge of military supply systems and personnel networks. Major Chun, you're authenticated for operational command authority. Your mission. Records indicate successful completion of 12 classified infiltration operations, including neutralization of hostile forces in denied territory. You have full authorization to conduct mission planning and execution according to your operational judgment. Webb's acknowledgement transformed the tactical situation from impossible to achievable through utilization of capabilities that had been hidden but never diminished. Sarah's transformation was immediate and complete as she assumed operational command with authority that reflected years of leading complex missions under circumstances that demanded exceptional competence and tactical flexibility. Her bearing and decision-making process revealed training and experience that exceeded anything her teammates had witnessed during conventional special operations training. Colonel Webb, I need real-time intelligence feeds, communication equipment, with encryption capabilities and authorization to conduct reconnaissance that will inform mission planning. The infiltration will require precise timing and coordination that depends on accurate assessment of enemy capabilities and defensive positions. Sarah's requirements demonstrated understanding of mission parameters that came from extensive Experience with similar operations. The intelligence briefing revealed enemy force composition and defensive configurations that confirmed Sarah's assessment of the tactical challenge while providing specific information that informed her mission. Planning process. The hostile force consisted of 20 professional operators, using advanced equipment and coordinated tactics that indicated state-sponsored military training rather than terrorist capabilities. Sarah analyzed the intelligence data with systematic thoroughness that revealed analytical capabilities developed through years of operational experience. Her assessment process incorporating factors that hadn't occurred to other personnel present during the briefing. Her tactical planning addressed contingencies and operational variables that demonstrated understanding of complex mission requirements and risk management procedures. The enemy force is positioned to defend against conventional assault while maintaining hostage control and intelligence extraction capabilities. Their defensive configuration indicates expectation of rescue attempts, but they're not prepared for solo infiltration using advanced stealth techniques and precision neutralization. Procedures. Sarah's analysis provided tactical insights that transformed the mission from impossible to achievable through application of specialized capabilities. Webb authorized immediate mission preparation with resource allocation that reflected recognition of Sarah's operational requirements and the exceptional nature of her assignment. Her equipment needs included advanced technology that wasn't normally available to personnel without specific operational authorization and security clearances that exceeded standard special operations levels. Sarah's preparation routine revealed methodical approaches to mission planning and equipment configuration that came from extensive operational experience. Her attention to detail and contingency planning, demonstrating competence that impressed even experienced special operations personnel. Her transformation from quiet logistics coordinator to operational commander was complete and undeniable. The infiltration began at 0200 hours with Sarah moving through terrain that challenged even advanced special operations personnel. Her progress monitored through communication systems that provided real-time updates to command personnel while maintaining operational security necessary for mission success. Her movement techniques demonstrated mastery of advanced fieldcraft that enabled silent passage through areas under enemy surveillance. Sarah's approach to the facility perimeter revealed tactical awareness that processed multiple information streams simultaneously, while making decisions that balanced mission requirements against operational risks. Her assessment of enemy positions and surveillance capabilities informed route selection that avoided detection while maintaining schedule requirements for coordinated mission execution. The facility infiltration exceeded all expectations as Sarah neutralized sentry positions, using techniques that demonstrated precision and efficiency that belonged in elite special operations units. Her elimination of 12 exterior guards was accomplished without triggering alarms or alerting interior personnel to security compromise, performance that validated her claimed operational experience. Webb monitored Sarah's progress through communication systems that provided tactical updates, while documenting performance that exceeded all benchmarks for solo infiltration operations. Command Center, this is unprecedented. Major Chun has eliminated 12 exterior guards without detection or compromise of operational security. Her tactical execution is flawless. Sarah's movement through the facility interior demonstrated understanding of building clearing procedures and threat assessment that enabled systematic neutralization of remaining enemy personnel while maintaining hostage safety and protecting classified information from destruction or extraction. Her precision and tactical judgment prevented casualties while achieving all mission objectives. The final phase of the operation involved coordinating hostage extraction and securing classified materials while ensuring complete neutralization of enemy threats that could compromise personnel safety during withdrawal procedures. Sarah's coordination of these activities demonstrated leadership capabilities that exceeded her apparent experience level, while revealing competence that justified her operational authority. Mission completion was achieved within 6 hours of initiation, with all hostages safely extracted, classified information secured, and enemy force completely neutralized without American casualties or compromise of sensitive materials. Sarah's performance had exceeded all expectations, while validating capabilities that had been concealed for 8 years of administrative cover operations. Webb's debrief revealed the exceptional nature of Sarah's operational success while acknowledging the sophistication of her deep cover assignment and the strategic value of her extended infiltration of military bureaucracy. Major Chun, your mission success validates the investment in deep cover operations and demonstrates capabilities that will be essential for future strategic assignments. Sarah's colleagues from the training program struggled to process the revelation of her actual identity and operational experience. Their understanding of her capabilities fundamentally changed by witnessing performance that exceeded anything they'd imagined possible. Rodriguez approached her with respect that reflected his new appreciation for her qualifications and leadership abilities. Major Chun, your operational competence is exceptional. I apologize for underestimating your capabilities during training exercises. Your tactical expertise and leadership skills are precisely what special operations units need for complex mission requirements. Rodriguez's acknowledgement represented recognition from experienced operators who understood the significance of her demonstrated abilities. Sarah's transformation from underestimated administrative personnel to recognized operational commander was complete. Her years of careful concealment validated by mission success that demonstrated capabilities worthy of the investment in her extended cover assignment. Her future assignments would utilize her actual competence while building on operational experience that had been enhanced rather than diminished by years of administrative infiltration. The strategic implications of Sarah's successful mission extended beyond immediate tactical success to validate deep cover operations as essential capabilities for complex national security requirements. Her demonstration of exceptional competence while maintaining operational security represented achievement that would inform future personnel assignments and mission planning for classified operations requiring extended infiltration and specialized capabilities. Colonel Webb's final assessment acknowledged Sarah's exceptional performance while recognizing the strategic value of her operational experience and the capabilities she'd demonstrated through successful completion of impossible mission parameters. Her assignment to advanced special operations units was inevitable given competence that exceeded all expectations and validated years of preparation through administrative cover operations. Sarah's vindication was complete as she received recognition for capabilities that had been hidden but never forgotten. Her transition from invisible logistics coordinator to acknowledged special operations commander representing transformation that honored both her sacrifice and her exceptional competence. Her story demonstrated that true capability couldn't be concealed indefinitely when circumstances demanded excellence that only genuine expertise could provide. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.